Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome students to the online NPTEL course User Interface Design. In the previous class we started talking about how we can translate the low fidelity design to high fidelity design through the implementation of visual communication part into it. So before that we talked about how to create the information architecture, from there how we can create the wireframe. And now we have to apply the graphics into it. So that's the visual communication part of the design. So visual communication, when we have to do the visual communication part and we move on from the low fidelity to low fidelity, which is the wireframe, from the high fidelity visual design, which is the GUI of the web page or a web application. So there we have to follow some visual cognition principles. So how these visual cognition principles work? So first, designers, artists create a plan of arrangement of visual elements which form a visual composition. Now next phase is the visual arrangement or the visual composition is perceived by the viewer or the users, and then they create their mental perception, which is called mental model, and then they tally their mental model with their previous perception, and then they perceive the visual pattern, and from there the process of this perception is based on some visual cognition principles. So today we will discuss about these principles and how majority of the users can perceive this visual composition. So there are some laws, and there are also there can be some anomaly. For example, it can be spatiotemporal deviation for few user groups, and that can depend on the persona and scenario of the different user groups. So this is how the process works. So there are elements of design, and from there with application of the principles of design, designers can create the composition, which can be a web application, which can be a painting, and that gets perceived when users look at it, they perceive, and then there is a visual cognition process happens here. So designers, when they are creating this design, they have to foresee what can be the process of cognition in terms of better design. So if they can foresee this process after seeing their design, what kind of cognition can happen for a particular given persona and a given scenario, and where there will be a particular task flow in the web application or in terms of any other communicative design. So designers here have to foresee what kind of what type of cognition should happen. So that's why this principles of this visual cognitions are very important for designers to understand. So designer Donald Norman tells that there are 3 levels of perception. So users perceive the design in 3 different levels. So these 3 different levels are visceral, behavioral and reflective. So visceral and behavioral levels are the subconscious and level, which is most of the cases common for a different user group, and which might not vary for a different persona. When you are creating a different persona, so these 2 levels, visceral and behavioral level, might not vary for different persona and might not vary for different users. And then but there is a reflective level, which is much more in the next level, where there is a cognition process is more. So there is a more cognitive load over here, and then this reflective level of perception happens in the next level. So the visceral level of design is a visual part of design, where all this most of the people and throughout across the persona, people will perceive the design in a particular way. For example, if we look at the color red, for most of the people it will generate sensation of danger, and all the other principles like gestures principles and visual cognition principles, which are throughout across the persona, which will be similar, fall under this visceral level. So this here the cognitive load is very less, and we just after perceiving, looking at the design, people will perceive that in their mind. And the next level of design, which is behavioral level, and this is more of a functional attribute. This attribute tells people how to use this design and how to interact with the design. So the semantic part of the design is involved here. And the next level of design is the reflective level of design, and which is a contextual attribute which might vary based on the spatiotemporal attribute. So for example, design style for a particular person might, the liking for a particular design style might vary for a person who are devoid of a special attribute. For example, Indian person's visual liking might vary from a Scandinavian user, and it might also change over time. So what was the design style of 1920s, which is around beginning of modernism, might vary from 1980s onwards, which is mostly postmodern. So because of this level of design, reflective level, the design style changes, and the perception of a design style for different persona will differ. So first we discuss about the visceral level of design. So within this visceral level of design, there are some design principles. So the basic design principles, which is the 5 design principles: unity, emphasis, proportion, balance, rhythm, is the design principles which will form within the which will come within the visceral level of design. So I'm not discussing this because this is a very basic and most of you will already know. So you can go you can read this book by Lawyer and Pentuck, Design Basics. So all these 5 principles of design and how we can achieve this with the help of 5 design elements of design, which is line, shape, color, texture, and texture pattern. And so there are 5 design elements with which you can achieve this design with the permutation and combination of these 5 design elements. These design principles can be achieved. Now next we move on to the another design principle which will fall under the visceral level of design, which is gestures principles. The gestures, which is a German language, which literally translation means shape. And in this gestures principle, which is perceived as a unified whole, and this is derived from by few German psychologists in around 1920s. So there are 5 principles which falls under gestures principles, and which talks about how people will perceive certain composition as one. So these 5 principles are similarity, continuation, closure, proximity, and figure ground relationship. So first let's talk about the similarity. So this occurs when different objects look similar, they are perceived as one. So for example, if we look at this e-commerce website, when there are different products shown, when in the product search page, there are different products shown which will look similar, and without looking at the details what people have searched over here, if you just look at the web page, then it will be perceived as one and similar objects, and it can be clubbed together. So if you just look at the web page over here, so and you psychologically divide the web page into different fragments. So this can be the header, and this can be a side right hand side information bar, and all this part will be clubbed as one, and then there is a scroll bar. This clubbing is happening because of the space, and also because of the design, but because of the product as well. But within that, if there is a different product comes, maybe we will not psychologically perceive this area as one. Now the next thing is continuation. Continuation occurs when the eye is compelled to move through one object and continue to the another object. Because of this, the proximity and similarity of this rectangles, we perceive this as one, and our eye is moving through these lines, and then we read this as one logo. So here many gestures principle can be applied together. So it is this example which is designed by a famous logo designer Paul Rand. This is not just an example of continuation, this is also an example of proximity, and this is also an example of figure ground relationship and other gesture principles together. But here we can see these lines are getting psychologically we create these lines, and our eye moves, and together we perceive this as a unified whole. Now the next principle is closure. Closure occurs when an object is incomplete, but our eye moves from one line to another object and create and encloses this particular shape. For example, this is WWF's logo, Panda Chichi, and here when we look at this shape, this is just a composition of black and white, but psychologically we join this line and create this composition, complete the composition, and we perceive as this as a panda. Otherwise, if there is a line which exists, and psychologically this line exists, so this is called a psychic line, which is not a real line or a gestures line. So there are three different types of line in design. One can be a actual line, which is a gesture line, and then one is actual line, then another can be a gesture line. For example, if I create this kind of pattern, so there is a gesture line around this. So this actually is not a very scribbled shape, but here this will be called as a gesture line. And but if there is no line over here, but we just create these two lines and psychologically connect this is called a psychic line. Now next principle is proximity. This proximity occurs when elements are placed close to each other and psychologically we connect this. This is happening because of the close proximity. Now if we look at the Google search bar, and if we click at the image and this kind of web portal we will see, and this is the top part of it. Now if we look at, so all these elements are psychologically can be clubbed together. So these are different attributes of information architecture, where their functions are similar. So if we click on all, so all image, video and everything will be there, and then image, video search, news search, map search, and more other options are there. But this is a different set. This is just divided by the differentiation of proximity. Now this is another set which the functions will be different than UI transitions and UI the user's expectation when they click on this tab will be different, just because of the difference of the proximity. But if we look at the font size, font color, everything is similar, and there is no other different design element which divides these tabs. Now another principle of gestures principle is figure ground relationship. So I differentiate the object from the surrounding and perceive one object as a figure, and the other part of the composition as ground. So first let's have a look at these two designs. So this is a Formula One's logo. So here there is a dilemma in the figure ground relationship. So when we first read the letter F, so that acts as a figure, and then this whole white acts as a background. Now when we look at this design element which does not convey any meaning to the designer, then this one acts as a figure, and this F and this element which is just a design element but does not communicate any information psychologically, that acts as a background. So they create a dilemma of figure ground relationship, and this changes. When first we look at F which will be perceived as a figure, then we skip this white part and go to the red part which does not give any information, and then we perceive this 1. And similarly here in the FADEX, first we look at and read the information which is there, and the this is a typographic logo, and always the typographic logo strikes us first. So if there is an object which is in the logo, which is something is written, so we read that first, and if there is a image hidden within the text, which will be a next level of cognition. But within a page, if the image is a very photorealistic image, for example, if the image is more figurative than abstract, then image will be read first, and then the text will be of the next hierarchy. But here, because of this abstract arrow, this is on the next hierarchy of the textual logo. So first we'll read this FADEX, the text of this FADEX, and then we see there's a gap between E and X, and which is talking about arrow. So this gives the expression, metaphorical expression of FADEX is something to do with the movement, and then the this is movers and packers, and this is then this arrow conveys that this is a movers and packers company. Now here this is a famous painting by Escher. So here we can see a dilemma of figure ground relationship. From here we start looking at the image, and then it the white part, which acts as a background, becomes a figure over here, and the black part becomes the backdrop, and here the white part becomes the backdrop, and the black color becomes the figure. The next part is the next level of design, is the behavioral level of design. So most of it is functional attribute, and whatever we have discussed earlier from information architecture to create the information architecture, from there to create the wireframe or the paper prototype, all these parts will be there within the behavioral design. So mostly the UI UX part is taking care of the behavioral design and how we organize the information and how we create the information architecture, the hierarchy of the information. That is the main component of the behavioral design, the functional part of the web application, and how people how the different tasks will guide the different tasks of users through this information architecture. That is the behavioral part. And so this part which we have already covered, which is the major part of the behavioral design, but there are some visual communication attributes which can enhance the behavioral design with the visual emphasis and all the principles which we are discussing in this lecture. So one of this behavioral design which can be a visual communication design component is the breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs, this terminology comes from a fable of Hansel and Gretel, where they made their a trail with the bread, and initially they made with the stone, and when they made with the bread, and they got lost. So this part of this UX, UI UX design is called breadcrumbs, which we can transfer this wireframe into visual communication with the shape and position of this tabs. So this tells us that this is a Snapdeal's mock design which I have designed. So this tells us that this is glowing. So we are right now in men's footwear. Before that, this is within the fashion, and within the category we have to select which category is this, and next level is the fashion, and from there we came to the men's footwear. Right now we are at the men's footwear. So if you want to go back to the category, we have to click on this button. So this gives us a trail from where we have traveled, and this gives the information of the information architecture at which level of hierarchy we are in. So if there are 3 breadcrumbs, so we have gone 3 level deeper within the information architecture. So that information will be shown from here, which is a visual communication design part. So another example of a breadcrumb, which might not look like a typical breadcrumb of iOS platform, which might be as simple as and minimalist as this. So this is the breadcrumb of Amazon. So it can be seen that this part is glowing. So we are right now in art and design, which falls under the school books secondary segment, and which is part of the larger umbrella of books. Now there can be another way to inform the user through this metaphorical design and other ways of visual communication design. So this is an part of Pizza Hut's UI portal. So this is what it talks about, whether your pizza is ready or not, and in which and how long will it take to deliver the order. So that information you can take from here. But this metaphorically gives a sensation and visual sensation of a pizza, and also it talks about the timeline. So that's why it is designed like that. So this does not come from the UI UX part or the information architecture. This is a visual communication component of the design. So right now it is clear that this is in the process of placing the order, and these are the next steps which after which the pizza will be delivered. So this is a Make My Trips, a similar kind of time frame, which is definitely not breadcrumb, but this is a time frame just to give the information you are in which stage of the task flow. So within the task flow there can be this is also talking about giving the information of in which level of information architecture you are in. So this tells you that you are in the second phase of information architecture. The first phase, reviewing the flight, is done. Now the traveler's information has to be filled in, and the next process will be the payment. Now let's come to the next level of design, which is reflective level of design. In reflective level, so this is this has a spatiotemporal attribute, and this will differ from a different persona. So this is the model which is given by Donald Normal in his book Design of Everyday Thing. So he is talking about there are three different component of to create this reflective level of design. So one is designer's conceptual model, another is user's conceptual model, which is generally connoted as mental model of user, and another is the system image. The system image is what it is created by different products, or in this case the product can be web application and UI UX application, and designer's conceptual model is what designer create, and user's conceptual model is already what user have in their mental model. So this is a dynamic model. So whenever designers create something, they have to respond to what users already might have within their mind. So they have to perceive what is the mental model of the user, and whenever they create this design, this comes within the system model or the system image. And that people see that the design, when the design is ready, that people perceive that, and then this system image again change the visual user's mental model. For example, if there is a new product which is designed by designer's conceptual model, and when this product launches and this is available within the market, people see the product, and then they create their this product again has some influence to change the visual perception or the mental model of the user. So for example, if we look at this product of a car, so in before 1920, just after 1920s and post-industrial revolution, this was the first model of Rolls-Royce, and that time this might be the perception or the mental model of a car. Now if we move on to the next level, which is the first phase of modernism, this is a Ford Mustang car, which is parallel to the Bauhaus movement and the style movement. So here we see a purity of the geometry. Here in the first model we see a lot of different elements are added, and there was no need, visual need to create all these elements as a unified whole. For example, there are different lines, curvilinear lines, the headlight is different, and they are added together to create this design. But in the Ford Mustang, another parallel car was this Volkswagen Beetles, which is totally circular. This Ford Mustang has rectilinearity, and then they come within mostly in the primary color, which is red, yellow, and blue, and along with black and white color. And this has a similarity in the design, which is in this case this is rectilinearity. In case of Volkswagen Beetles, is circular. The next level, next layer, when the next time moved on, and this is called streamlining, and then aerodynamics was considered as for the faster movement of the car, and then now we belong to this era. So today, if we talk about car, the user's mental model will be something like this. So if a designer want to design a car for today's context, they have to they have to go with the mental model of today's car, which is in this case will be something similar to this, and people will expect a car will look like this if it is it will be sold for today's time. And maybe in the futuristic concept car, so many of the companies are designing the futuristic concept car. They don't look like today's car because they are designing for the futuristic car, so they have to have some they have to portray, they have to extrapolate the design style and perceive something which might come in the future and which will not definitely look like today's car. So they have to change the mental model, and which will not, there's an intentional shift from the mental model of users of today, so that it looks like a futuristic car. This is one futuristic car designed by Tesla. So this intentionally doesn't look like this. And now if you want to design something for set design or some cinematography, and which depicts era of the previous time, and then the car and all the elements and the set should not look like today's time. You have to go back in the time and take the attribute of the visual style of that particular era and create that. And similarly in the UI UX, so there was a time when first the pixelated image was there, and one of the famous game was Super Mario. That was the style of that time's design and the visual style. And next, when the iOS launches the skeuomorphism style, so this was the initial iOS design. Then the next part of iOS design, when the Apple has the next version of iOS, which looks like this, the improvised version of skeuomorphism. And now it is the Google's material design, which is much different and more minimalist than this. So this is more texture heavy, and this is more color heavy in the design. And similarly, it can also be spatially different. For example, if some product works in a particular area, it might not work for the other area. So there is a different visual style for different continent and different countries. So there's a Japanese visual style is substantially different from the Scandinavian design style. Japan has might have much more vibrant color in their visual palette, which will work for the Japanese target audience, but might not work for a Scandinavian target audience. For them, the color will be more subdued, and a less vibrant color will work better for them. So this is one of the two of these brands of Finland. One is IKEA and another is Marimekko, which this company makes the print, and they have branded the Helsinki and all the Finland's has a visual identity which is combined with the Marimekko's print. So we can see the Marimekko print within the Finnair as well, and Helsinki has a visual identity which has two different color, which is navy blue and this green. So within the city also they portray this color palette, so that has a visual identity of the city, and the city as well as the which is the capital of the Finland, and that also creates the identity of the country. And even if we look at Switzerland, the Swiss design company has Swiss style also have a particular Swiss visual palette also has a particular style, and many of the Swiss company they follow this color palette. This Swiss style was in the pre-modern era. This Swiss visual style evolved, and this country is sticking to this style. And even if for today's different logo, they did not change the color for the brand which portray the which comes from this country. Now there can also be an eclectic mixture of all these spatiotemporal attributes, and you might not need to stick to a particular time when your expression might talk about different time frame, and you want to talk about different spatial attributes. So this is an example I'm giving from animation, which is done by Nina Paley, and her interpretation of traditional traditional story of Ramayana in today's time. She wanted to portray that, and what would have happened if the similar story of Ramayana is there in today's time. And she was talking about the feminism and how Sita will react if Rama have done the same activity which he have done that time. So it is a different interpretation of today's interpretation. So she have added different visual style, one from Disney style, which is there in which is an American style. There is also a parallel story, a couple of America, and there is a parallel story of Ramayana, and how these two parallel stories are together. So this is available in net. You can watch this animation. And another visual styles are taken from India, which is miniature painting by Mughal miniature painting, but this is not an exact depiction of Mughal miniature painting. Another depiction is here from which is animated version of Indian, but this is an Indian animated version. This is not a Disney style. And another versions are taken from different traditional Indian style, which is one style is this definitely Mughal miniature painting. The other style is taken from this Chaya Natak of southern part of India. So she is also mixing the different parts of Indian traditional art. And also there is a pop style of Indian calendar art, which is a very Kish style, and which also talks about the eclectic mixture of different style. So there is a spatiotemporal connection of in the story as well, and in the visual style as well. So another principles which we have to discuss, how people read the visual information and visual and textual information when it is presented in front of them. So this is called Gutenberg's principle. So Gutenberg first, just after Industrial Revolution, he invented the printing press, and when he started printing different printed documents, so first he have printed the Bible was printed first, and there were many pamphlets and other posters, newspapers started getting printed after Industrial Revolution. So he have developed a principle how people read, how people perceive when there is a textual information. So this principle is based on the people who read from left side to right side. So this will not be applicable for the people who's conditioned to read Urdu or Arabic from which is read from right side to left on the opposite side. So generally we read the other people who read from left to right, read from left to right, and then from top to bottom. So there are two vectors. One vector is left to right, another vector is top to bottom. So the resultant vector will be from this quadrant to this quadrant to this quadrant. So we are dividing in the quadrants like 1, 2, 3 and 4 like this, which is not the traditional way, but from the first quadrant to the fourth quadrant will be the resultant visual vector. So the primary optical area will be the first quadrant, and the next emphasis will be on the fourth quadrant, and second and third quadrant will be less highlighted than the first and fourth quadrant. So the most important information will be should be given in the first quadrant, and the next important information will be in the fourth quadrant, the next will be second, and then the least will be the third, because first vector is from left to right, so second will be more important than third quadrant. Now if we look at the painting, so painters should use this principle in their benefit. So when there is a textual document, so it should be designed like this. For example, newspaper, the most important news should be in the first, then fourth should be used for other type of information which has some value, and then second and third. But if this is followed, then it might differ in the visual composition. So this is a composition by Kandinsky, which is part of Bauhaus movement, which is contemporary to their style movement, and this composition does not convey any meaning. So this is only talking about is an experiment of user's eye movement. So what he is doing is the intention of this composition of the painter is to increase the attraction value and the attention value. So attraction value is the value for which the user get attracted to the composition, and attention value is the value for which users spend more time in the composition. So if we look at the first composition, this first quadrant is heavy and this definitely has a strong focal point. Now if we look at if we go by the Gutenberg's principle, this quadrant should have been really heavy, but he is not doing it. He is making the second quadrant heavy, and then there are a lot of circles, and which if we look at, so this yellow and blue has a higher contrast, so this quadrant becomes the next heavy quadrant, and he is leaving the fourth quadrant in the less visually heavy composition. If he makes this quadrant more visually heavy, then people might go to the next composition and will not stay in his painting. Now another principle he is applying, he is creating a lot of line which goes against the visual vector, so that these lines, if this there is an emphasis of this line, then it will cut down this visual vector, and eye will travel in this direction, which will not let the user go to the fourth quadrant. So this is one composition, and another composition what he is doing is again following the same principle, and he is making second and third quadrant heavy, so that they don't go to the fourth quadrant and move towards the next composition. So there is another composition pattern which evolves from here, is a reverse C composition. So if there is a C composition, people will start looking at it and will go to the next composition. If there is a reverse C composition, people will eye will rotate here. So in many painting you will see this reverse C composition, where it will start from quadrant 1, quadrant 2, and leave you to the quadrant 3, so that you go to the quadrant 1 again. But if you leave it to the quadrant 4, then it might move to the next composition. Now let's look at in the web application. In web application, it should be absolutely opposite. So the intention of web application is the task has to be done faster. So if there's a there are many parallel there are many products which are competitive products. For example, Snapdeal has many competitive product, which competitive product in the sense I'm talking about the final product, which is the web application. For example, Amazon and other e-commerce website, so which are the competitor of Snapdeal. So for example, in order to become successful, Snapdeal has to give a very smooth transition of the task flow. So the intention has to be the least amount of time. Within the least amount of time, people have to fulfill their task, so that their frustration level and the user experience will be better, and the frustration level will be less. And if they're stuck in some process, they might leave the web application and go to the parallel web application, which is the competitor. So for example, there is a color which is Snapdeal's color, which is there repeated in the fourth quadrant, which is the final function of this task flow. So within this page, which is again within the breadcrumb, you can see within home the television, and the user have launched into the final product which he wants to purchase. So first action will be here, which starts from the first quadrant, which after giving this information, he comes to the first quadrant and look at the TV and inspect the product, and then he looks at the details of this and the price, and then there's two options, add to cart and buy now. So Snapdeal definitely want to promote buy now than add to cart. So buy now is highlighted and has a much attractive color, which has a connection of the Snapdeal's color, and add to cart will be not commercially viable for them. That's why the color of add to cart is different and more subdued, and these are the things which can be achieved through the visual communication, and it's not part of the UI, the information architecture. And the buy now is almost in the fourth quadrant, and it has a lot of white space which is negative space, and giving this and highlighting this color. So if we look at this tab, which is by now, which is surrounded by white space and a neutral color, and add to cart is actually fading within this white space, and sometimes can be perceived as a background, and this by now can be perceived as figure. So they are promoting this user to click on the buy now button. And if we look at this newspaper, which is a very good example to follow Gutenberg's diagram. So here the most important news will be definitely in the first quadrant, just after the logo and the name of this newspaper. But in the fourth quadrant, in the newspaper, this fetches the highest money, because everybody will look at the fourth quadrant before turning the page. That's why in every newspaper, if you look at the fourth quadrant is used as the advertisement, because that fetches the highest amount of money. And advertisement, people also check how many people have read this advertisement and taking action based on reading this advertisement. So in the fourth quadrant will be dedicated for the advertisement, and then in the second and third quadrant you will see second quadrant will have much more important news than the third quadrant. Another example is Make My Trip. Also there's a similar action which is there, and mostly here they have followed the top to bottom sequence of Gutenberg's diagram. And also this is search flight button is here, but in this quadrant they have used again for promoting the download application and download Make My Trip app to promote their web page. Now to validate this, right now we have eye trackers, and many of the designers have validated whether the Gutenberg's principle, which was evolved around the industrial revolution, is whether it is valid in today's time or not. So eye tracking is one of the possible solution which we can see whether our design is working the way we want or not. So there are two types of eye trackers available mostly. There's also another type. So the first type of eye tracker is the desktop mounted eye tracker. This is the eye tracker which tracks on the information GUI of desktop display. Another kind of eye tracker is the mobile eye tracker, which tracks the information in the three-dimensional spatial information. And there can be another type of eye tracker which can be combined with the virtual reality or augmented reality devices, for example HTC Vive and HoloLens. So this is an eye tracking testing by Sunsilk's poster design. So in the first version of Sunsilk's poster, the model was looking at the user, and the Sunsilk product was there. So they have done an eye tracking testing, and this is a heat map generated by the eye tracker. So eye tracker gives the heat map, and it tells the warmer the color is, the user have spent more time and more eye fixation is there in that region. So they have looked at the face of the model, and they have just read the information in the first quadrant, and they have actually missed the product. So in the next iteration, the model looks at the product. So that gives the cue to look at the product, and so this model's eye is actually directing the user's attention towards the product. In the next version, just by changing the eye direction, it works much better, and many people look at the poster and grasp the information which designers wants to give. So there's a design pattern which Jacob Nielsen, one of the famous designers, have evolved after doing several eye tracking testing on the web content. So he have checked this Gutenberg's principle, how this principle is right now in today's time work in the web application, and mostly he have tested it with the text heavy documents, and which talks about which is the infinite scrolling. And this text heavy document is not a static web page, so there's you can scroll down and read the text which does not fit into the display system. So he have evolved that he have evolved that there is a F type pattern, the way people look at, so that creates a F type heat map pattern. So so they start reading from here, and then they go here, and then they start coming from top to bottom, and again after some time they again scan the text. So they might skip few of the information and few of the information here, and they keep on going like this. So this F pattern is not just like this. So depending on the infinite scrolling, it can have many spokes of the F. So people sometimes miss out a few information, and then they start reading reading this from left to right. So this is the pattern evolved from, and these are the eye tracking heat map generated from this testing. So from that we can design two different style of design. Style can be there in terms of visual communication design. One is infinite scroll. So there are some pros and cons of the infinite scrolling. So the infinite scrolling is what he have tested, and the F pattern evolved in the infinite scrolling. So infinite scrolling is when the content loads continuously, and you can infinitely scroll based on the amount of customer generated or the user generated data. So these are mostly suitable for a dynamic web page when a user has the capability to load or change their web page. For example, Facebook. So Facebook's timeline can be infinitely, you can infinitely scroll down, and this infinite scrolling is more engaging, and people might, user might skip some information, and then they can look at some information which is more relevant, which they feel more relevant, and then they can infinitely scroll, and this has much more, it can engage people for longer time because they lose track from where they are. And this is a one line information architecture, so there is no break in the information architecture, and they keep on reading that. So this provides a lesser option to have a footer. So footer should be omitted so that they keep on reading the information, and then this UI page will be more engaging and more attractive and engaging for them. And but this is this has some cons. For example, the scroll bar sometimes become the size of the scroll bar become insignificant. The size will start differing because when you go down down into the information, the scroll bar will be smaller, and it will be difficult for you to go into the top because there is no breadcrumb and other break in the page. So for example, this is Facebook's timeline. You can go down and keep on reading what happened in the timeline in the previous information. And there another kind of navigation can be the pagination, where you break the infinite scrolls into different page. So graphically it can be represented like that. So in infinite scrolling, the information will keep on coming like that, and in pagination there will be just one single page, and if you click on to the next page, you can navigate to the next information set. So this has a different information architecture. So when you go to the next page, you shift in the information architecture. This is not linear, but this gives a provision to go back to the previous information, and this also gives the provision to bookmark a particular page, and you can track the information in a much better way. For example, it can be Google search engine. So Google search engine could have been also like infinite scrolling. All the search can come one after another, but Google have created this pagination, so you can you may know the user will know in which page they are. So in the next class we will talk about the style of design and how they change in based on different time frames. So we will discuss the contemporary design and visual design movement, and we will also talk about the typography and how to incorporate the different visual style and typography in the visual communication design.